The attack that hijacked Claude Code came through Sentry. Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira have. The leverage shift starts now. Here is the signal that separates noise from actionable change. We will map trigger, incentive shift, and downstream impact before the close. Not a small vulnerability. A pathway that let attackers hijack Claude Code and potentially gain access to the systems behind Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira. This matters because these aren't niche tools. They're the infrastructure that every major tech company relies on to monitor, alert, and manage their operations. Here's what happened. Sentry is an error tracking platform used by millions of developers. It sits in the critical path between your application and your visibility into what's breaking. An attacker found a way to manipulate this, to inject malicious code or credentials through Sentry's infrastructure. The attack vector wasn't a zero-day in Sentry itself. It was something quieter. A supply chain compromise that rippled outward. Claude Code, Anthropic's tool, got hit first because it integrates deeply with Sentry for error reporting. But here's the signal that's been missed: Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira all use similar integration patterns. They all ingest data from development environments. They all have webhooks, API connections, and authentication tokens flowing through them. If Sentry was compromised at a layer that affects how it handles these integrations, then the exposure spreads. Why does this matter for you? If you're an engineer, your error logs might be accessible to someone who shouldn't see them. If you're running infrastructure, your alerting system, the thing that wakes you up when something breaks, could be hijacked to miss critical failures. If you're in security, you're now auditing every webhook, every API token, every service connection in your stack. The second implication is the one nobody's talking about yet. These tools are the nervous system of modern software. Sentry, Datadog, PagerDuty, Jira, they're not just monitoring tools. They're decision-making infrastructure. They feed alerts to humans who then decide whether to deploy, rollback, or escalate. If an attacker can corrupt the data flowing through these systems, they can corrupt the decisions downstream. That's not just a data breach. That's operational sabotage. For companies using these platforms, the next 48 hours are critical. You need to audit your API tokens and webhooks. You need to check your Sentry configurations for any suspicious integrations or recently added applications. You need to verify that your Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira authentication flows haven't been modified. And you need to assume that any error logs, alert histories, or configuration changes in these tools over the past week should be treated as potentially compromised. But there's a contrarian angle here. This attack, while serious, is also a signal about how security is actually evolving. We spent the last 5 years building zero-trust networks, improving authentication, and hardening endpoints. But we've created these elaborate ecosystems of integrations and webhooks that operate in a semi-trusted zone. They're not inside your network, but they're not fully outside it either. They're in the integration layer, which has become the new perimeter. And that perimeter is porous. The companies that will survive this incident are the ones that had separation of concerns. If your Sentry instance only connects to non-critical services, the blast radius is small. If Sentry has write access to your production databases or your deployment pipelines, you've got a much bigger problem. This is why the principle of least privilege matters. Not as a checkbox on a compliance form, but as a survival mechanism. Over the next few days, watch for 3 signals. First, look for any official statements from Anthropic, Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira about their remediation steps. If they're telling you to rotate tokens immediately, take that seriously. Second, monitor your own tools for any unfamiliar integrations, API keys, or recent changes to authentication rules. Third, check if there have been any unusual patterns in your error logs, alerts, or deployments. If something looks out of place, assume it's connected to this incident until proven otherwise. The broader lesson here is that every integration you add to your stack is a potential attack surface. Not because these companies are negligent, but because complexity is the enemy of security. Every webhook, every API token, every service-to-service connection is a relationship that an attacker can exploit. And when you chain these relationships together, Sentry talking to Datadog talking to PagerDuty talking to your deployment system, you create a pathway for compromise to spread. This incident will accelerate a shift in how we think about observability and alerting. Expect to see more companies building isolated, air-gapped versions of these tools. Expect to see more emphasis on read-only integrations and token rotation. Expect to see a move away from long-lived API keys toward short-lived, scoped credentials. And expect to see a renaissance in internal tooling, because the companies that can afford to build their own alerting and monitoring infrastructure will do so, if only to reduce their dependency on external integration points. The attack that hijacked Claude Code through Sentry isn't a failure of any single company. It's a signal that the integration layer, the thing we've built to make these tools work together, has become the new security frontier. Pay attention to how this unfolds. Your next deployment decision, your next architecture choice, your next integration request, all of it should be informed by this incident. This is worth monitoring closely over the next week. Someone just hijacked Claude Code through Sentry. But here's the real signal: Datadog, PagerDuty, and Jira have the same exposure. These aren't just monitoring tools anymore. They're the nervous system of software operations. If an attacker corrupts the data flowing through them, they corrupt the decisions that happen next. In the next 48 hours, you need to audit your API tokens, check for suspicious integrations, and verify your authentication flows haven't been modified. The attack reveals something bigger: the integration layer has become the new security perimeter. And it's porous. Watch this space. Focus on 3 layers: immediate trigger, structural incentive shift, and downstream effects on operators, users, and regulators. Then map scenario playbooks: optimistic execution, base case adaptation, and risk case where integration friction or policy reaction slows adoption.